Times has called Alex English one of the queer young comics redefining American humor. Alex just finished his first season as a writer for Saturday Night Live. He's also written on BET's The Rundown and The Fix with Jimmy Carr. He's appeared on HBO's That Damn Michael Che and made his Comedy Central stand-up debut on Alana Glazer Presents Tight Five. Alex has opened for and toured with such acts as Michael Che, Roy Wood Jr., Michelle Wolf, and Colin Jost.
Welcome to the show, Alex English.
Wow, you really don't know what you've done until someone puts a package together. That's great.
You've done a lot.
Anytime something like that is presented to me, I'm like, damn, I did that.
Yeah, you've done a lot of it. We have a lot to talk about. If we were just doing an entire podcast just about your career accomplishments and the things that you've been a part of, but we have a lot. We want to get into your writing and stuff too. But let's start with the career. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in comedy and some of the big movements and the things that happened that kind of brought your career to where it is today.
So it was like 10 years ago almost, and I had moved to New York, and I was working in like a bunch of like restaurants and coffee shops and stuff, and I was working at this one particular restaurant in Manhattan, and this young lady that I was working with at the time, she was doing comedy, and she done like open mic. She was on the open mic scene for a little bit, and then she invited me to come with her to an open mic night at like Broadway Comedy Club in Hell's Kitchen. So I go with her thinking that I'm just going to be in the audience supporting her because, I just found her to be funny and a cool person to hang out with. But then she had gone up, done her thing. A couple more comics go up, and she's like, you need to get ready because you're next.
Nice. Good friend.
And I was like, next? She was like, yeah, didn't you want to go up? I'm like, go up? I didn't understand what any of that meant. And I'd always been like a fan of stand-up comedy. I always knew what stand-up comedians were. But before I moved to New York, I never really saw like a pipeline or like an avenue for that. And entertainment is never really something that, I'm from Detroit, so entertainment isn't necessarily a career path that is said. People can say it to you until you blue in the face. Are you talented? You can sing, but they don't have like, there's no like direct, clear way of getting into it, especially maybe with music, it's more, you learn music, but with comedy, there's literally no one saying you should be a comedian. So it was always thought that if anything, they're saying you should shut the fuck up and go trying to be a clown and go get a job. So because of that, whatever aspirations I may have had kind of resurfaced in that moment because I didn't like stop her or I didn't take my name off. I just went up there and did it anyway. And I can't remember what I said. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I had already had like maybe 2 or 3 drinks because I was truly going in there as an audience member. So I'm just like probably slurring my words, saying the most ridiculous shit that anybody has ever heard. And I'm leaving out of the mic kind of like, I just remember leaving being like, well, that I did that and I'm gonna go home. But the guy who was running the mic at that time came up to me and like encouraged me to come back. He thought I was really funny. So I like just kept going back to that one open mic and like thinking, I guess this is how you do comedy. So I just kept going to the one same mic until I learned later that there was much more to experience.
Yeah, turns out there's a few more in New York.
There's a few more. Yeah. Like I would go to that mic. There was a turning point at that mic particular where there was another comic who I think I remember her asking me like, so are you going to the other mic downtown? I was like, other mic? I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. I'm a comedian. I go here, I perform. I'm not even passed at this club. I'm just performing for other comedians. I had no idea what it was. So she was like, no, you can go to other like open mics. You can do like in New York, you can do like upwards of like 5 to 6 in one night, in any given day. So I had to learn that aspect of it. And then I had to learn about the bringer shows. at the clubs, and that nightmare of a that nightmare of a process where you have to, you know, find and make some, often less, it's more so make 5 friends. Finding 5 friends is one thing. Making 5 friends in order to bring to a comedy club to put up with your 5 minutes, you know what I mean? I exhausted a lot of friends. I did. I lost a lot of friends doing comedy with the Brinker shows.
That's why it's important to make them as new friends. So when you lose them, not really that big of a loss.
Yeah.
Truly just using you for. I mean, I used to log into like dating apps and like Grinder. Yeah, it's like Grinder and like all these other. And I would tell dudes like, yeah, I do comedy, and they'd be like, wait. I remember one time I had a show at Gotham Comedy Club. And I had 2 friends, no, I had 3 friends that were already coming that I knew. And then in order to fill my quota to get stage time, I hit up 2 separate dudes on Grindr. No intentions on meeting up with them. Just was like, I'm a comedian. If you want to hang out, this is what I'm doing. And they both came and I got to go up, and I ended up leaving before I could even like see those 2 guys again.
One of the number one questions I always get is like, how do you promote your shows? How do you get people to come to your shows? And Alex, get on Grindr, guys. Lure
people into a false sense of intimacy. Yeah.
You don't even have to be gay. Just get on Grindr.
You don't even have to be gay. Yeah. I'm not. I'm kidding.
You just sneak out of there and hope that the 2 Grindr guys meet each other.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, Drew, that's how I felt. I was like, well, if chances are they'll see each other, you know, and
you'll get it.
They probably already hooked up anyway, you know.
That's awesome.
I did it kind of like it wasn't anything I had planned, but because it was when it became presented to me, it was sort of like, oh, this is a way to do comedy. But I didn't think that at no point in the beginning year of me doing comedy did I think anything else would happen beyond what I was doing. So it's wild to think that accidentally, and I don't even think the young lady who introduced me, who brought me to the mic, even does it anymore.
Yeah. So you finally figured out there's more than one open mic in New York. Good. We're making progress.
Mm-hmm.
What was the next thing that kind of happened in your career that kind of took it after the Bringer shows and stuff? When did it really start making moves for you?
Well, I kept doing these mics, and I kept doing all this really just like clumsy. I like to call like when comedians first start, like, and it's been almost 10 years for me, but now I kind of notice, like, especially with open comedy, it's very clumsy comedy. So it's going to be bits that you're not going to be telling, 5 years, hopefully 5 years later. It's like you're starting comedy kind of just doing baby jokes and things that, I have no life experience. I started comedy when I was 23. I have no real world experience really outside of living in New York for a few months. So I didn't really have a fully formed opinion on anything. I wasn't talking about being gay because even though I was out of the closet, really, I didn't really it didn't feel like something important to talk about because I just didn't really have much experience with it. So in like the first 2 or 3 years, it was just me trying to figure out like how to be on stage and how to get attention of the room and how to be, and how to make other comedians laugh. Because New York City open mics are just you and 10 to 15 to 20 other comedians in a greasy, in a slimy, it's in a basement. It could be in a barbershop. It's like comedians, if they want stage time, they're gonna find comedians will go. If there's stage time in hell, they're gonna go to hell. It does not matter. So I was literally just going up wherever anyone would have me. I would go to strip clubs. I would go to parks. I would do anything to like get up in front of people. So I felt like every single year that from the time that I started to now, something new, I had to like learn something new. And I felt like if I weren't learning anything new, and if I felt like my material wasn't getting better, then I would have to figure something else out. But that started happening. I started like getting more attention from my peers, getting asked to do shows specifically, much like not actual open mics anymore. Like people were starting to like pay some attention to me, to want to like have me around on their show or host their open mic and like get like I would do some of those bringer shows that I would do at the clubs. the booker would be around and like ask who I was and kind of throw me a bone like on the house show for like 5 minutes. So I kind of just like kept focused and just wanted to be better, just like listen to myself on tape, you know, try to get. So I don't look at, I know this is the question I had, was the big break. What was the big? I look at it sort of as a lot of smaller breaks that built up to where I happen to be now. I think like the first big, I'll say, I guess I can credit my first big break really with being there used to be this show that happened in Brooklyn. It was called Night Train, with Wyatt Cenac, who used to be on the Daily Show, and he had his show on HBO a few years ago. And I used to go to this show and just watch. You know, I was like an open micer, so I would just go to the show and like watch all of these people who were like ahead of me, you know, and been around New York, that I had heard of, that I had like done research on while I was doing open mics, kind of watching. I would like watch other comics, like clips that they had on YouTube, because, you know, we didn't really have Instagram. Like, it was Instagram, but it was nowhere near where Instagram is now for comedy. But I would go on people's YouTube pages and look them up, and like all of these comedians that like work the Cellar, and these big people who are big names now who weren't big names 10 years ago. To me, they were like, these are the people that New York City loves so much. And that I go to an open mic and they walk in and everybody's making a gangway for them to get on stage, you know? So I was observing all these people, all these different acts. I was observing them to kind of see how to do comedy in front of an audience, not that aren't your peers, that aren't like other comics. So Night Train was the first one, and I saw Night Train as like, it was Night Train and it was the Knitting Factory, and this was when Hannibal Buress was hosting it. So those two shows, and actually it's funny, Knitting Factory just ended after all those years because the venue's closing. So the last show was on Sunday. I got to be a part of that, which was like a huge deal for me. But Night Train was the first like major like booked bar show that I was able to participate in after like observing how important it was to so many comedians. I sent a tape and I was just like crossing my fingers, and God bless Marianne Weiss. She saw the talent. She saw the jokes, and she was like, this would be good. This would be good for the brand, for the Night Train brand. So I did my first set there ever. It was like a May, I want to say like maybe like May 2015, something like that. And Wyatt introduced me, and that was a big deal because I was a big fan of Wyatt, and that was my first time meeting him. So it was like this guy who like does stand up that I like, who I've seen on TV. I was still like a Midwestern kid in New York, just impressed and like starstruck by like, you know, people who are pretty, like Wyatt's like a famous dude, but he's pretty on the ground when it comes to like, this is his home stage. His home is right around the corner, you know. So I was like, oh my God, it's Wyatt. And like when I got off stage, he complimented my set. I did it. I mean, I had a pretty decent set, and he was very complimentary to me. And I was like, they had me on like for another 2 shows, like within the span of like 3 months, I was back on Night Train. And I was like, damn, they must really fuck with me. And then there was a now defunct streaming service called CISO. And Wyatt's Night Train series was turned into a stand-up series, like it went 2 seasons, and it's basically the same format, just with more production behind it, and Wyatt doing his show, and it's recorded. So I was asked to participate in the second season for that. And that was crazy because up until that point, the first night I ever did Night Train, I had a friend. I had asked a friend to come and record myself for me, like a professional, like with a camera and everything. So I have that still to this day. But that Night Train on CISO taping was the very first time professional television cameras were placed in front of me to perform. And I was freaking out. Like I couldn't, like, it was just very hard to process, like, oh, this is going to be on TV and I have to do well, because if I don't, me not doing well is going to be on TV.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments where, one of those early moments where I had to really rise to the occasion, and like, you know, but that was one of the moments where I really felt like, oh, okay, I think I have something here. I was like, okay, if this is where I am 4 years in, then 4 years later, there could be more. And I'll never forget that night too, because Black Thought was there. He was on the episode with me. And when I got off stage, it was Black Thought. Wyatt was back on stage. So it was, when I got off stage, it was Black Thought sitting on the couch to my left, and Michael Che was on the right. And Che was just, and then Black Thought came up to me and was like, dude, I don't know who you are, but that was great. So I was just like, I was two people that I admire and were fans of, and I was like, well, I guess I'm here.
Wow. And then now you've gone on and done a lot of work with Michael Che for sure. Now,
Yes.
I mean, SNL, his show on HBO, you guys are like working together. You can't get away from this guy.
He's obsessed with me. No, he's somebody that he's a very fine example of somebody that, like, when I got to New York and started doing comedy, he was somebody I would see at these bar shows that, you know, no one had a clue who I was. He didn't have a class. I mean, these are Michael Che, Jermaine Fowler, the Lucas brothers, Hannibal, Wyatt. Like, these guys were like, you know, these guys were larger than life in New York. Everybody wanted like a piece of them at their show, you know, like, so these are the guys, like, they could walk in, not be on the show, and in 10 minutes they're on the show. So I was like, I want that. I want to walk in and somebody's like, oh, well, you know, Alex is here, maybe. And you know what? I'm gonna keep it a buck, y'all. It happens now.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished. Because like there was just some sort of power to that, where I'm like, these guys are so funny that they can walk into any show they want to, and people are like, come on, guys, can you give me 7 minutes? And then that 7 minutes is 20.
Yeah. So how was the process of becoming a writer on SNL? Did you have to go through an audition like
I saw 3 packets? I think you submitted 3 packets, right?
I did. I submitted 3. You know what's funny? I before doing stand-up, I had no clue that stand-up comedians also worked as television writers. It was not something that I had any experience with. I think I may have taken one like broadcasting script writing class in college, and I think I dropped the class because I was just intimidated and it was like, I don't know what any of this shit means, and I don't care to learn it. Let me just figure out something else. But it was brought back into my life by stand-up, because
that's your job. You dropped out of the class and now it's your gig. Wow.
Well, people, when you start doing comedy and you find some leverage and you gain some momentum, people start asking like, well, what kind of show are you writing? It's like, I'm writing stand-up. I'm not writing scripts. Like, what the hell? Like, I just didn't have that in my background. And when you move to New York and you perform any sort of like performance art in New York City, you are surrounded around people who have all of this sort of like experience. I didn't know what the hell Final Draft was. And I was like, let me write my jokes, dog. So when all these opportunities to write, for like when the Rundown with Robin Thede came up, and the National Lampoon and Jimmy Carr show on Netflix reached out to me to consult, that was where I had to like, okay, just like with stand-up, I had to just kind of throw myself into something that I didn't know how to do. So with SNL, I think it was, the first time I submitted a packet, I got no response. It was pretty much like, I think I had just received it cold. It was kind of like I didn't have any representation. Someone had just brought it my way and was like, I think you would like, here's the email for it. You know, you should definitely try. And I didn't get any response. But then the following year was during the lockdown. It was my second time was during quarantine, during the pandemic. So I had gotten further. I had reached the interview process. So, and everything was, of course, on Zoom. Now, I know we're doing video conferencing right now and it's going very well, but I am a better interviewer in person. So there's better energy. You can get a feel of me better if we're in front of each other, which I like to believe played some part of me not getting it the second time around. But also they only hired one person. They hired one person because of just, pandemic, and like that was just a weird time for anything. this third year was the charm, and I actually got to interview in person the way I wanted to, and it worked out the way it was supposed to.
That's awesome. That's got to be a little got to be overwhelming for anybody, no matter how good your career was going previous, to be like, I am now a writer for SNL. That's got to be like walking into that building. It's got to feel crazy.
Well, it is. It's absolutely crazy because you're walking into this space where these are the people performing at like the top of their game. You know what I mean? And it can knock you back a little bit if you are coming from a particular place. Like for me, I've been doing stand-up 9.5 years at that point, got hired, and I was like feeling as though I was nearing the top of my game as it relates to like New York stand-up. I'm still gaining some traction on like the touring circuit. I'll be in Texas this weekend, I'm still gaining that. But in New York, I got passed at the Comedy Cellar in June of last year. So it was a year ago, and this was months before I found out that I got SNL. So getting that, being kind of knighted with the ability, with being able to say, oh, I am a working comedian at the Comedy Cellar. To me, that was like, oh, I'm really like at the height. I'm really killing like stand-up comedy right now. I am one of the best. I was starting to feel like I'm on top of the world. But when you go into a place like SNL, you are not the best. Not your first year. You're not the best. So there was a moment where I had to deal with not being the best. I had to really think about my place, and like I basically had got sent back to 2012, basically, where I'm in this environment where I don't know what I'm doing, don't know why I'm doing it, but obviously there's some reason there's something here, and I'm gonna figure that out. So it was intimidating the same way that starting stand-up was intimidating. But it would have done me a disservice to fall apart, because I didn't do it with stand-up, so I might as well see it through. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for the group that I belong to, because I belong to a very specific group of like SNL people, and that's stand-ups who come to SNL. And there's many, but in relation to like improv actors and character, workers, those people, that is really the meat and bones of SNL. Those people who like work and do improv. Whereas me, I'm just some straggly little stand-up off the streets, who y'all found and was like, come on and offer something to this institution that's been here long before you were even thought of. So
yeah, have you written?
That's a big deal for me to say that I'm one of the stand-ups who contributed to SNL.
Absolutely.
Did you do a fair amount previous to SNL? Were you writing a lot of sketch type comedy, and this was something? Are you already?
No.
None.
Like well, you know what? Let me because like the Rundown with Robin Thede had sketches in it. I maybe had one cold open that was just like very like blink if you missed it. There was nothing. It wasn't impressive at all. It was an honest effort, but I was writing more of like her monologue and her act 2 jokes and like talks about like topical jokes. I was doing those things. Gotcha. On the National Lampoon Radio Hour, which was a podcast for the reboot of the National Lampoon Radio Hour from back in like the 70s.
Yeah, but it predates SNL. They stole all their people from
it's crazy that I was even a part of that. It's in connection in a relationship with SNL. That was a whole nother topic. But that was my first time actually. So that was my first time writing sketches. But sketches for podcasts, sketches for audio is what we were basically doing. So I think there was a different style we had to meet. There was a different expectation for what our sketches were supposed to be. Right. So, but that was an introduction to me on how to like format and like bring my comedic voice to a dialogue on a page, which was a new muscle that I am still figuring out how to make stronger.
That's gotta be new.
That's where you grow.
Very new, yeah. So, and I mean, and even in SNL's case, SNL has its own special formatting of scripts that I'm like, well, damn, I didn't even know. So I spent all this time learning Final Draft and learning how to actual like an official script. And I get into this other, I go into this job and they're like, no, we don't do it like that. We do it like this. So I'm
Of
like,
course they do.
I'm tired of learning. Yeah.
Well, let me do this. We're going to transition into stand-up writing. This is a stand-up focused show. If I'm going to do a quick clip of from your recent Comedy Central.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's outdoors. I know, so it's kind of the jokes are there. It's less than a minute. Let's do it.
Hey, but I had a gender crisis when I was younger. I was confused about some stuff. You know, my mother used to leave me at home a lot when I was young, like suspiciously a lot. You know. It's like, ma'am, that is not how abortions work, you know? But she would leave me at home and I would do what every kid would do and I would go and snoop around in her closet and I would see a blouse hanging up and I would throw the blouse on her and I would check myself out in the mirror like, this needs something else. And I would go over to her dresser and I would put on some jewelry and I would go back into the mirror and I would look at myself like, bitch, how dare you come out here without shoes? And then I would see a pair of heels on the floor. I would put both feet in the heels and I would look at myself one last time like, all right, okay, I don't like this, but I'm a bad bitch. You know?
That sigh of relief after getting that bit out.
But that's pretty relatable stuff. I don't care who you are or what sexual orientation you are. You tried on mom's shoes and clothes, or what? You did that.
What's funny is that I got some reactions to that. Like people sending some people, men. The women, of course, were sending those messages, but there are men who sent messages to me that were like, "Damn, I thought I was the only person doing that."
Yeah, it's like a challenge. Try to walk in high heels as a child. You're like, wait, this is like a game. I can do this.
Yeah. That bit is. I haven't done that bit in a while. So yeah. Shout out to Alana Glazer for employing stand-up comedians during the pandemic.
Yeah, those were the best environments, having to operate
outside. It was not ideal, but I did.
The elements and, whatever, ambulances and helicopters and homeless people, just so many, you're up against everything.
That night of filming that was like, and it started raining too on some people's sets. So it was like, it was crazy, but a beautiful production all the same.
Yeah. So when it comes to writing for you, we kind of just always ask it broad, open-ended, how does Alex write comedy?
I think I'm equal parts writing, like actual writing, and like also some days I'm kind of just like in a daze and I just think of something and I'm like, oh, I'll remember that. What comes to me, and I'm never like I don't necessarily sit down with like a pen and paper for hours and like write. I will when I really feel like there's something that I have to say that I need to like write out. And I'm like, what is the thought? What's the joke? What's the tag? Like I will have bouts of that, but not always. So sometimes it's like, I'll really have to be thinking about something in a particular subject in a specific way. Like with that joke that y'all show came off of like, it's sort of like another, like an extra bit kind of that is off of like some transgender material that I do. And the bit, the sentiment behind it is just like, I will never have like a judgmental viewpoint of trans people because I know kind of on some level I had some like, thought process behind what are these clothes for me or are they just for my mom? Are they for like, it was like, oh, who am I to judge somebody for how they present? Because I used to think that maybe this was what I wanted to do. And when all it takes is like living in it a little bit and kind of thinking about it. And I'm like, I guess I don't, but I could see how someone would. So that was like kind of weird because it feels like that bit kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's like, that's kind of where the premise kind of is set up in the beginning, because there's another joke before that. But yeah,
she broke up with you. And
transition. Yeah. It was a whole, and even that joke has like come such a long way. I mean, some of these jokes have been so restructured and like rethought, because like after some of my jokes I've noticed they'll do great in their infancy, and maybe this has more to do with my delivery and maybe me being tired of the joke, but like I'll start to notice, oh, this joke is starting to bomb a little bit. Maybe there's something to be changed here, or ditch it altogether because it's lived its life. So I do a lot of like my writing process is a lot of listening to myself. So I don't understand these comics that I've met. You know, you see them put the phone next to them on the stool recording, and you see them, and then you ask them, you know, you're going to listen to that? And they're like, nah. I'm like, well, what did you record it for? Like, I listen to myself a lot. I don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like the biggest fan of hearing or seeing myself, but I do want to like be able to hear what worked and what didn't. You know, I think people are afraid to listen. People only want to listen to themselves killing, but I listen to the bombs because I'm like, oh, stop doing that. Stop saying that. Stop saying it that way, or give yourself some time to like, you know, say the bit over and over again. I mean, that mom clothes thing, I'm sure I've listened to it a bunch and like, yep, this isn't working. That act out is a little lazy. You gotta like, you watch yourself and listen to yourself, because then that way I've listened to myself a lot and have like, oh, it's almost like being a comedian trying to give another comedian notes, but it's you're giving yourself notes. So what notes would I give this to this set? And I would give plenty, and I would go this way and I would go that way. So I've done better at like hearing myself and listening to myself with a critical ear, just as critical as I would be. I mean, we're comics. We've all been in the audience listening to somebody. I'm like, I would have did it that way. Well, why don't you do it to yourself?
Yeah, right.
if you know better, no one. You have to be the one that says it. So that I spend more time being critical of myself than anybody else.
That's a good trait to have.
Oh yeah. I think that's one of the best ways to write, like tags and edit is, when you're in the middle of listening to yourself and you can zone out and not realize it's you, and that honest feedback that you can give in that moment. That's some of my favorite kind of writing that I've done probably. So you say you just take in a lot of thoughts. Are you writing a lot, pen and paper? Are you keeping a running list in your phone? How do you collect these thoughts as they come to you?
Sometimes I'll just jot down 1 or 2 words that are like specific to the joke that I have in my head. If there's a thought, if there's like a line that I'm like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like this is all like, sometimes I'll get on a writing streak and I'll just go. And sometimes I'll be at a bar. I was at a bar just like doing like before a show. I just went to a bar and like was doing this. And the guy was like, what are you writing over there? I'm like, my manifesto. So I just kind of get like I said, I just have moments. I have like spurts of like thought where I'm like, oh, I need wow. Because if I'm chuckling to myself, I'm like, put it in your phone, do something with it just so you'll have it somewhere. But I'm pretty good about like knowing. I do like just getting on stage and kind of saying the thought raw without having any sort of like writing to it, because then it'll help me feel like I don't do that every time, but it offers me the opportunity to explore, and I can just fail knowing, like I oftentimes will tell the audience, this joke came to me on the couch earlier today. And so I'll say that after it bombs, and then they'll be like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you're looking at me like, take that shit back to the couch when it's
Can I make a distinction? Would you do that? Would you do that at the Cellar, or is the Cellar everything has to be written and polished because you always have to kill?
The cool thing about the Cellar is that they give you the space to, I mean, that's what it's for. I think the Cellar, it absolutely encourages trying new things. I think at some point, you know, you have a relationship with the wait staff there, and like I'm always looking at them like, I know they're so tired of hearing me talk about this thing. Like, let me come up with something new for my homeboy to listen to while he's serving these chicken fingers.
Yeah,
you know, and I do want to challenge myself, and I think the Cellar offers that. You know, it's good that the Cellar has multiple stages to perform on, so that, you know, the pressure, the pressure is always there to perform very well because you never know who's in the room. So I think my strategy with that, with any show, really, not even just at the Stellar, is to give some real good, strong A material at the top, sprinkle some of them new thoughts in the middle that maybe don't even notice. They won't even have to know it's new. You know, they might be along, get the audience on your side a little bit, establish some rapport, and then, you know, they trust you. So now you can go into other territories. So I take advantage of that club in that way because this is some of the greatest audiences, and they've traveled from all over the world. Many of them also just native New Yorkers. So it's a good way to just get it out there. And it's like, if you never lose that open mic spirit of like wanting to do a new thing, then you'll never like I get tired. I'm tired of my jokes now. The jokes I'm getting ready to tell this weekend, I'm happy to be doing it, but I'm very much ready to like put a lot of these bits on wax and like put it out there for the world to see, so that I can move on with my life and get a new fresh material.
That's what I was going to ask you. I don't believe, right, you haven't recorded an album to date, have you?
Not yet.
Okay, so it's coming. Yeah.
Is this an album release?
Not yet.
Notice?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just say, what's the Mariah Carey the meme? Not yet. but I am working on something, but not yet.
Well, we're ready for it. I've noticed in my current writing situation lately, I've been noticing that I'm getting a little lazy. I'm doing a lot of good collecting, I think. Like I have the notes in my phone. I'm always writing down interesting thoughts. And I'm noticing I need to have some of that sit down quiet time to actually create something there. Like just the idea alone is okay. It's a spark of an idea, but it does take some sit down, like you said, those moments where you just like maybe feel inspired and got to dig into it and actually do the real writing.
You also got to live life too. I know we want to sit down and put pen to paper and always have the next bit. We always trying to get these tweets off, frame reels off, and that's all fine and well, but we have to live our lives. You have to go out there. You got to go out there, get married, go out there, get a divorce, go on that trip, go like pay a prostitute. Like, you know, go to a concert, go to read a book, go and like jump off a cliff, go like do something crazy and like live life and like listen to other people and read the paper and like just because that's where, you know, that's where you're going to draw inspiration, whether it's stand-up, whether it's writing for film, writing a comedy sketch, right? Like a lot of things that, especially like when it comes to like SNL, like coming up with material, because we have to come up with stuff every week that we're working there. And I'll often be like, well, damn, I only really know what I want to do, like, and say with my stand-up. So how do I pull from inspiration? You got to go and be in the world to like have a funny take on something or to come up with the next good sketch, you know, because that's, we have to live in society in order to report back to our community what we find funny about everything around us. So I think the best way to write is to live.
Yeah, that's great advice, because I think we've all been at the open mics and everyone's telling the same butt jokes and the butt sex jokes and the rape jokes and the Nazi jokes. And it's because maybe they're not, their head is always running around these open micer jokes, and they're not outside living a life that creates some inspiration.
You have to live a life. That's the best way to write. That is the absolute best way to write, is to have a lived experience as a human being, and then take some time off, and then come back as a comedian ready to tell the world what you've been thinking.
I think the pandemic was such a curse, but also kind of a blessing to comics to be like, hey, get out of the rat wheel and stop going to mics every night. Take a night off and go live some life. And I think the pandemic really was a nice shock to our systems as comics, as a reminder for that.
I agree 1,000%.
Yeah. How do you find time to live life on the SNL schedule though.
You gotta
Right?
make time. You gotta
Yeah.
make time. I mean, thankfully, SNL kind of runs, the schedule kind of runs in a way that's like 3 episodes here, and we have breaks, and I take advantage of those breaks. I go on dates. I go hang out with my friends. I go on vacations. I don't work. I read a lot of books. I watch the news just to see what the hell is going on in the world. And it ain't just CNN. I watch Fox News too.
Yeah.
Because I gotta see what the fuck they talking about. My friend, I was in Miami and I was like getting dressed, and my friend came to my hotel room. He saw Fox News was on. He was like, "What's going on with you?" I'm like, "You don't listen to them too? Like, I need to know what the fuck is going on." I'm not taking in what they saying like as anything that I should be, but I'm like, I need to know what they saying. Like, yeah. Because then it just helps. It helps you like know the world, and you know what people's fear. I like knowing what people's fears are. I love that when I go to my shows and it's like a bunch of different people, and it is not just black, it's not just white, it's not just gay, it's not just straight. Everybody's there. It's everybody, and I that's the kind of environment that I thrive in, because then I can get away with everything because everybody's here. Republican, Democrat, white, black, Asian, transgender, handicap, like I want any and everybody, because that way, if I got a joke for you and it's targeted at your people, you can laugh and give everybody else permission to enjoy themselves too. So
Yeah, and so I just moved to New York recently, and I've noticed
no Republicans here.
yeah. No one watches. I've never walked in on someone watching Fox News. That's never happened.
Well, when you go to Miami, Florida, that's the first channel on the hotel room stations.
I bet it is.
You can't avoid it.
But I think there's something about the diversity of the audiences in New York that's very good for that, because now I'm going through the process of going, okay, I have these sets of jokes that work in Houston for people who understand my upbringing and my history. We are on the same page, but now how can I tell these jokes to people who are unfamiliar and come from so many different backgrounds of all the things? And I think that's one of the reasons that New York is such a good comedy town, because if you can make all those people from all those different backgrounds and histories laugh, then you found something universally funny.
Honestly, though, I think it works both ways, because I've been in New York and been only doing comedy in New York this whole time. And after a while, for me, even though I know New York is so vast and the audiences are always changing, it starts to feel like I'm performing for the same audience sometimes in certain shows. So I love to go out into America and go and I like to go and see a new group of people. And chances are people have never seen me before. New York, like the coasts, God love them, like they are tapped in already into who's who and who's what. They kind of know names of comedians who aren't, top billing, but when it comes to like, when I go to DC and when I go to Boston and when I go to Omaha, Nebraska or some shit like that, and I'm the show, I'm their evening, that to me is like, oh wow, I'm the ticket tonight. And they may not know who I am, but they're gonna leave there knowing a new comedian. And like that to me means a lot, because I think it can work. It can definitely work both ways in that way, because New York can be such a bubble, like it's true what they say. I need more Republican fans, honestly.
Yeah,
I need more Republican fans. I mean, if you only got one political party that's down with you, then that can be that's called extremism. And I want everybody to be down with me, because I'm down with because I think it helps that like I grew up in more of like a bipartisan sort of like environment. Like I know Black Republicans and I know Black Democrats. I grew up with them in my family, so I know what these people care about, and I know what I know what can. And it also helps that I still sound like a nigga in Michigan. You know what I mean? Like my accent, like I get mistaken for being from the South all the time. So I know that when I go to places like Texas and Austin and like when I go to Houston and Austin and like Atlanta and Florida, I go down there and they're like, "You from New York?" I'm like, "I live in New York," but there's some familiarity there because they hear me and they like, "Damn, you sound like a motherfucker that I work with."
It's a pretty good.
I take pride in that. I take advantage of that.
pretty good melting pot in Houston. We're inside the loop, which makes us lean more towards liberal. But to your shows, we're gonna have people from all over the city, so it'll be a good melting pot of people.
I can't wait. I've never
all
been
walks of life
ever, so I'm very excited.
We're excited to have you. And I had we sold like 5 or 6 sets of tickets while we were on this podcast. So we're moving tickets, my man.
Get to this show, y'all.
We'll actually put Fox News behind you on the television if that makes you feel more comfortable.
Please. Please. I don't know what that's going to do for me in the long run, but if it sells these tickets, then
let's do it. Well, let's do our last segment. Let me play a quick graphic. It's called Last Laugh. So strange. I'm sorry. Okay. So it's called Last Laugh. And basically, Alex, what is the joke that you want to be remembered by? It could be your joke, one of your comedy heroes, the joke you want written on your tombstone.
Wanda Sykes, she had this joke. She said, ladies, wouldn't it be great if our pussies were detachable? Wouldn't it be great if you could just leave your pussy at home sometimes? And she just goes into like this long. That was one of the first jokes. Like there's so many jokes I could put on my tombstone of other comedians like that I admire. But that was one of those bits that, because I mean, Wanda Sykes to me is like top
so
5.
Great. She's so great.
She's top 5 she's in my top 5. And like I feel like Wanda is so good at telling the joke and then providing you with an excellent act out that perfectly illustrates what you were already thinking, which kind of elevates the bit. And detachable pussy, if you've never seen it, you must don't walk to YouTube. Wanda Sykes, detachable pussy. The whole special is incredible. I think it was her first. I think that might have been her first.
Her early stuff is so good.
That might have been her first hour that she done. And yeah, she talks about leaving your pussy at home and like how convenient. Just think of the freedom you'd have.
I do remember that bit. I'm going to go back and rewatch that.
It's a great bit. It's a great. I put that whole bit on my headstone.
Nice
video screen.
Play it on a loop. Yeah.
Well, I grabbed up your Instagram handle, so at Alex English, where the E is a 3.
That's right.
Anywhere else people need to know to get a hold of you?
That is the same way. That is the same handle as Twitter. If you're more Twitter leaning, and alexenglish.co is my website where I have all my dates. Couldn't afford the M.
Basketball player took it.
Yeah, well, no, it's free. It's still free. I don't think the basketball player is finding any use of a website. Really,
no, he's been retired for a long time.
Yeah, so we'll eventually be able to afford the com, but right now it's just co. So
we'll start a GoFundMe for you to get that M.
Thank you very much. See, this is what I came here to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. We're excited to have you down in Houston, Alex. So much.
I can't wait.
Such a delight talking to you today. And thanks everybody for listening. This has been Breaking Down Bits. See y'all later.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Down Bits. You can keep in touch or get more when you follow at Breaking Down Bits on social media, visit the website breakingdownbits.com, or shoot us an email at breakingdownbits@gmail.com.